The Inside Blitz is back together. We've been missing our partner in crime, Ted Sobel. He's been kind of slacking a little bit, working for the NHL and covering the playoffs and doing the pregame, postgame, midgame stuff that happens between periods. And we've missed you, Ted. How were
Thank
the
you.
playoffs?
Oh, it was great. A fantastic time. It was really, we had so many great games, especially the last two rounds. They were just amazing. We had the one blowout, that 7-0 blowout game for Colorado. Separate from that, a lot of one-goal games, low-scoring games, which I don't know if that was good for you. I know you like the overs on some of the early ones, but
No, I was an under player. I was happy with them.
oh, you were good, excellent, excellent. No, ton of fun.
So, a little known secret here, Ron and Ted went to high school together back in the day.
Mhm.
And they have some amazing stories that they're going to tell us.
Amazing,
Yeah.
Ron. It's
I'll bet
amazing.
you guys never got into trouble or got into any sort of tomfoolery, did you?
So boring. It's
Yeah.
sickeningly boring.
What blackjack in the halls, does that count?
Yeah,
No.
illegal gambling in the hallways is sort of fun,
Yeah.
but we weren't going to get arrested.
Yeah.
This show is going to be a potpourri of a variety of different topics. First, I want to catch up on what you basically do, Ted. You're done with the NHL. When do you go back on contract for your NFL work, and what are you doing now? And when do you start your prep? And when do you go into full swing?
Well, I'm actually prepping all the time. And you know what? Our podcast, and you've talked about it a lot, Chris, the fact that we're sort of helping each other out during the off season. So when it gets to be crunch time, we're going to be up to speed as much as anybody. And hopefully that's going to help the viewers as well. But I'm always prepping.
I'm trying to get across to people that um, none of these videos are probably the Pythag was pretty intense, but most of these videos are meant to have discussion and to lay foundation of knowledge so that we can kind of chew on it over the summer. We're not going to be getting highly detailed and into these stats and saying you got to bet this and this is how I feel for sure on this team. It's a building process for each of what we do to just build a foundation of knowledge.
Yep.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Ron.
all right. I say some of what we've been discussing, example in the previews and in the toss-up shows when we talked about quarterbacks, we're brainstorming ideas off one another. So I'm taking mental notes, I'm transferring them to my preseason study sheets and so on and so forth. Always learning, always putting together the puzzle. It's not snap your fingers and you have a conclusion on which way a game is going to go or a season is going to go. It's an ongoing thing. And I like, Ted, your comment about you're always prepping because you're going to be that much ahead of the game. Week one, you're going to be talking to people you haven't talked to for months and months, but you're already thinking about them and thinking
Right.
about the matchups.
Pretty much up to speed as soon as week one starts. And that's where I go. September 11th, we got a doubleheader, and I'll be on at 9:30 a.m. Pacific time with my first pregame show.
But what are you specifically doing now with your prep? What are you focusing on at this time of year?
I don't think it's anything specific because I am not doing any damn broadcast until week one of the NFL. So unless something comes up, and if you guys are out there and you want me, we'll talk. But Sports USA is very seasonal. So we did our NHL stuff. It's over. NFL stuff, it literally starts with week one, game one. I think we got Pittsburgh and whoever Pittsburgh plays week one. I can't remember what it is. But anyway,
Cincinnati.
I believe that's our first game.
And I already have a wager on that game.
Really? Yeah, that's great. Who do you have?
I have Cincinnati or Pittsburgh +7.
Wow. Okay. And unfortunately, you have no idea who the quarterback's going to be, but whatever. We'll deal with that later, right?
I'm pretty sure I know who the quarterback's going to be.
Okay. You know how that works over there.
Ron, you had some surprise questions you were going to spring on us.
All right.
Fire away.
Yeah, you better watch out. Pittsburgh, Cincinnati. I wanted to see where my power numbers are. You have where's the game at?
It's in
I think it's
Cincinnati.
Cincinnati.
Okay. Well, okay. I could sort of understand the line, but Pittsburgh brings back so much of its defense that, but there's a lot of good situations favoring Pittsburgh in that game, or really against Cincinnati. So I understand that play completely. In the division, there's a lot of news, of course, about Deshaun Watson, and I kind of teased Chris this morning about this, but does it matter to either one of you who is the quarterback week one? And, let's, for argument purposes right now, say it could be one of three quarterbacks, most likely not Watson, but it could be Brissett. And if a small segment of the population thinks it could be Baker Mayfield. Would either of you handicap the game differently if it was Mayfield week one?
Yes, I would. Yeah, I think it's going to be Brissett myself. I can't envision the Browns changing everything they've done and all of a sudden say, we're going to embrace you now, Baker. You're ours just for whatever amount of time. And Baker's not the kind of guy who likes to. He's not exactly Mr. Team guy in that respect. He's already shut him off. They don't exist in his life. He said something yesterday about that.
Yeah.
Well, hey, if they want to come to me, maybe we'll talk, but otherwise we're done. So do you want that as your quarterback going into the season? I don't think so.
You know what? I'm going to disagree with you because I'd love to have him there. He's a bargain to keep on the roster. I think that he would come in with a chip on his shoulder the size of
he always has a chip on his shoulder.
But it would be even more intense. I mean, he gave his heart and soul. He played injured last year.
Oh, absolutely.
I think he would show up and do the very best he can to just, basically stick it to him because they know he's gone regardless at the end of the season. And the other thing it's looking like Watson may not get this full year suspension. What's the latest that you've heard, Ted?
Yeah, it's totally up in the air. We need another day. If we did this tomorrow, I think I'd have a better answer. But they're still having their meetings, and I mean, they can do whatever the hell they want to do. So I think he's going to get at least several games, if not the entire season, because there's so many question marks. There's a giant cloud over his entire life, and that's going to affect everything. But I don't want to misconstrue what I was trying to say about Baker. I wouldn't have a problem with him playing. I just don't think Cleveland wants him. And until they embrace him, he is the kind of guy like, screw you, I'm not going to play for you, even though he's under contract. That's my issue.
I'm going to rank order three scenarios, and you guys could agree or disagree. Scenario number one, Baker Mayfield starts the season and plays 8, 9, 10, 16 games. To me, that makes me like Cleveland more than scenario two. Scenario two, Brissett plays the first 6, 8, 9, 10 games, and then Watson takes over. Or scenario number three, there's no Watson whatsoever, and there's no Mayfield, and Brissett plays all 16 games.
Who's the backup to Brissett at this point?
I don't know.
I think they would pick up a quarterback depending on what happens with Mayfield. I don't think the backup's on the roster right now with Mayfield.
And Ron and I have talked a lot in the past that we both like Jacoby Brissett, but he's not a quality starter for the long haul. He's a quality player, and he could do fine. It's just what is he going to be able to do if he's the guy for all 18 weeks? We'll see.
I mentioned it before. You see this opening day game where Cleveland was favored by 4, and now they're down to 2.5, and many think it's going to be down even lower. I think Cleveland has a very solid team, offensively, defensively. If they get quarterback play that is just don't make any serious mistakes, just be serviceable. You're not gonna throw 70-yard bombs. You're not going to be running for 80 yards. Just don't make the mistakes. And I think Cleveland can surprise. I think they're a quality team.
And I also think, by the way, that Jacoby Brissett is going to make less mistakes than Baker, if you think about it that way, because Baker takes stupid chances, and that usually costs him.
They don't have the wide receiver core that's, I would rate it like a C- wide receiver core right now. Landry's gone, Beckham's gone from the past, and so on. Brissett's probably not going to stretch the field, and if Brissett's a quarterback, they're not going to ask him to stretch the field. We're going to see lower scoring games. We're going to see by the book kinds of stuff with Brissett, just something to keep in mind there. But if you want to switch it to Carolina and where the odds have gone from 4 to 2.5, this is a huge game for Carolina. They cannot afford to start out of the gate 1-3 or even 0-2. The pressure to relieve their coach will be too high in this not so patient world. For whatever Cleveland's going through, they're used to drama each and every year. It started with Hugh Jackson. It continued with Freddie Kitchens. It's been there with Mayfield. I think the pressure's on Carolina in game one.
I still like Cleveland to win that game, no matter who's behind center.
Okay. And in the long term, what do you think about Cleveland if Brissett was there all 17?
Well, it's an issue. I mean, it's durability as well. We'll see. Look, if they got a decent backup and he's going to have to play, whoever it is probably going to play some. That's the problem. We don't have a name yet. So,
is Amari Cooper going to be like? Is he washed up? Is he going to be a benefit?
First year, it's always a spike up because they want to earn their contract. They've signed the contract. They're going to a new team. The problem is chemistry. It won't be as much of an issue with chemistry if Brissett's the only one taking snaps between July and game one because he'll play with the same quarterback. But if it gets muddled for any rhyme or reason, we know Watson's been at camp and he's throwing passes and so on. I'm not sure there's going to be enough chemistry where if a 10-yard out is required, is Brissett going to be that precise to throw a 10-yard out? Is Cooper going to make the right turns and stuff like that? I don't think you can rely on that.
By the way, I love the fact that we're talking week one here on June 29th. This is great.
Yeah. Well, what other sports are there? I don't know.
We have golf, tennis.
Oh, golf. Yeah. Tennis, Wimbledon. I was watching that.
Me too.
Yeah, it was good. Ted, so I want to ask something. You mentioned that your next interview is about the week one, but do you interview anybody between now and, let's say, August 30th?
Not if I'm just doing the normal stuff, but if I'm going to do maybe a podcast on my own, then I might bring somebody in for that. Otherwise, no. Like, for example, I'm going to the Dodgers game on Sunday. You guys probably never heard of. Well, no, Ron was there. Ron, remember the MLK game in 1970, right?
I was there, or you better believe I was there.
Yeah, well, I was there, and that story's in my book, Touching Greatness. But the Roberto Clemente story about seeing him after the game, and Joe DiMaggio when I snuck into the locker room after the game. So they are going to use my program. Thank you very much, Chris. There's my book. They're going to use my program from that, and they're going to display it at the All-Star game in a couple of weeks at Dodger Stadium. And then they're going to try and do some kind of tribute to that game. It would have been the 50th anniversary 2 years ago, but they can't do it. Now it's 52nd because of the pandemic.
Right.
So they're trying to do something special. Chris, you got a funny look on your face.
Yeah, because I don't know what the hell you're talking about. And I have to imagine 90% of our audience doesn't.
MLK tribute game. It was 2 years after Martin Luther King was killed.
Okay,
1970. So the 50th anniversary was 2 years ago. And it was a game where there were as many future Hall of Famers in that game at Dodger Stadium than any All-Star game you can ever imagine. I think there were 23 Hall of Famers either on the field or including coaches. Joe DiMaggio, Roy Campanella, I think Casey Stengel, just unbelievable amount of guys, right? So, and Willie Mays Willie Mays flew to Los Angeles from Japan. The Giants were playing this was during the spring training, all right, the week before the season started. Willie Mays flew from Japan just to be in this game. And Roberto Clemente said not too long before he died, he said they gave him a little medallion for playing in the game, and he said that thing means more to me than maybe any award I've ever won.
Wow.
Because it was the MLK game. So it really, now, just the fact that it's 50 years, I wrote a whole story about it in my book. I think it's a great time to give it a tribute.
Well, I was a juvenile delinquent at that age, so
well, for the younger listeners, the people like Aaron and Clemente and even Mays, the things they had to endure on the road. Roberto Clemente couldn't eat at the same restaurants as the rest of the team, even though he was the star. The hotels that he stayed with a family instead of a hotel. There's so many stories, and yet they were such accomplished baseball players, and they didn't let that get in the way of their dream of being such superstars. But it was, the ground that was broken by Jackie Robinson and even Mays, Aaron, Clemente, and Martin Luther King, and so on and so forth, can't be underestimated in terms of what we're seeing in today's sports.
No, we're not going to get into a long discussion, but if it's not for sports, I don't even want to think where our society is right now. I mean, it has changed everything. And Jackie Robinson is a top 5 important character in the history of this country.
Well, that was a great movie, 42. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, saw that one. Yeah.
What else you got, Ron? Put us to work.
Put you guys to work. So this is not a baseball story, but I wonder if Ted even remembers this. He invited me to a WNBA game once. And I said, sure, I'll go and stuff like that. I think it was Diana Taurasi or something.
Yeah, I was there for her first game.
Yeah. And so we're doing various things. I'm sitting there after the game in the women's locker room, probably someplace I never believed I would be. But, and everybody was around Taurasi. And the other girls were taking it or whatever, and they didn't know who I was or whatever. And I have experience interviewing people, so I started interviewing the other ladies and stuff like that. But what happened after the locker room? Do you remember running into Michael Cooper?
No, I mean, I knew Coop pretty well for many years, so I don't remember. Just another day.
I believe you had a scoop that day.
Was that when he became the head coach or something?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I don't remember that.
He doesn't remember his own scoop, so I'm telling you
really
right now.
He told me that he was going to do it.
Yeah, the next day he was going to be announced.
I've got a good memory. I don't remember that.
Yeah.
So we're going to see you in Winning Time, season 2, I guess.
So basically, my question to you, Ted, is you must have had a couple of other scoops along the time. Maybe talk about one that you remember.
Well, some of my biggest scoops would be Wayne Gretzky getting traded from the Kings. I broke that story, that he was being traded to St. Louis Blues, and he was there for a couple of hours. And then he ended up signing with the Rangers the next year. This is mid-season. So that was a pretty big one.
How do you get a scoop? So what's the process of getting a scoop like that?
Well, I'll tell you the insight on this one. By the way, the Seattle Seahawks is the greatest scoop.
Yeah.
Have we ever talked about this, Chris?
I don't know.
He doesn't know the story.
The LA Seahawks. You don't know about the LA Seahawks?
No.
Oh, yes. That's a big story. I was Mud. My name was Mud in Seattle because they thought, because I broke a story, that I was the guy behind it. All I did was just say, hey, the Seahawks are moving to Los Angeles. So anyway, two quick thoughts. Wayne Gretzky thing. I am in, where was I? I was in Peoria, Illinois, okay, doing a minor league hockey game there. And my coach was on the phone at one of the old pay phones. And he came out and he said, we're not going to be able to do morning skate because this was a St. Louis farm team that we were playing, because something about Gretzky is going to be coming to the Blues and they have to do other stuff and blah, blah, blah. And I said, Coach, are you sure about that? Remember, I'm also a reporter, not just your play-by-play guy. And he said, I am positive about that. And I said, I always need 2 sources to break a story. And I said, I don't know of another source. He goes, believe me, this is the only reason we're doing it, because Gretzky's coming. And it hadn't been announced. So I called my radio station, KFWB, and I said, Gretzky's being traded to St. Louis. And they said, are you sure? And I said, yep. And they put me on and we talked about it. And it happened about an hour later. So that was one scoop. The other one was the Seahawks, right? Their old owner, who was Northern California or Central California guy, he kept saying he's never going to move the team. He's happy in Seattle. Then when they played at the dumpy old Kingdome, and it was such a dive. And there was politics behind whether or not they were going to get a new building and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, I'm at LA, this how long ago? This 94, 95. I'm at an LA Raiders practice, and the guy is head of security there. I got to know because we used to stand around and talk to him all the time. He walks up to me, goes, "Hey, Ted, did you hear about the Seahawks thing?" I said, "What are you talking about?" He says, "They're moving to LA." I said, "What?" How would I have heard that? He says, "Well, we got a memo from the league saying get ready because they're moving." And, this is the security's going to get that first because they have to deal with all their inner stuff, right?
What year was this?
This is 94, 95. In the background behind me there, where is this? Okay, I got a golden mic right up there for that thing. Anyway, it's I think it was 95. It was just as the Raiders, their last season when they were leaving, and the same with the Rams before they left for St. Louis. So the guy said to me, "It's going to happen, so you do it whatever you want. Don't tell anybody that I told you," but that kind of stuff. So I said, again, I need a second source. So a couple days later, I saw another security guy who I knew from one of the training camps, and I asked him. I said, "What's behind this?" He goes, "I can't tell you about that." He goes, "It's inner stuff. It's not for publishing purposes. It's not for broadcast, whatever." And I said, "Okay, I'll tell you what. You don't have to say a word. Blink to me. If it's a yes, blink." And he said, "Are you serious?" I said, "Yeah." And he goes like this. And I go, "Thank you." And I made the announcement on KFWB, the Seattle Seahawks are moving to LA. And then all hell broke loose. But remember, this is mid-90s, so it's not like social media now. I mean, it would have gone berserk now. But then it was just Seattle cared, and a few other people heard about it. And it was mentioned on ESPN or something, I think. But and then I was the bad guy in Seattle because they thought I was moving the team. It's not, no, I had nothing to do with it.
That was your banana in the tailpipe.
Yeah, but they did move here. They ended up. It took a few months. They moved down from Seattle. All the trucks met. There's the old famous thing from the Baltimore Colts moving to Indianapolis, right? With the overnight, all the Mayflower trucks and taking all the stuff away, right? So this was similar. Except for it was the West Coast. They came down the Pacific Coast Highway. All the trucks emptied out Seattle's offices, and they stopped in Anaheim, and they were taking over old Rams Park in Anaheim, and they just parked the trucks there until Paul, what's his name, the Microsoft guy,
Paul Allen.
Paul Allen bought the team, saying you're not going anywhere, and then they came back, but they moved to LA for a very short time.
Well, Ted, I just want, to make things really clear at this point that your obligation going forward when you get these types of inside information is, get that second source.
Yes.
You contact Ron and I with the information, and then you contact your place of employment and do what you have to do to air it out. But we're going to need about 30 minutes on any information that you have. So.
No problem. Although I don't do that as much anymore because I'm not covering sports the way I used to sometimes, but mostly just the majors, like the Masters or Wimbledon or whatever, that kind of stuff.
What about this David Tyree story?
Yes. Well, Rod, you started out because it became a story because you had odds on him in the Super Bowl and nobody knew who the hell he was.
Well, Chris knows how much I dig for props, especially in the Super Bowl, and shop around and see if we can get advantages. So this wouldn't have been a story to Ted unless I roped him into this and found out that I had done a terrible thing in terms of what the odds were. I thought it was 1.5 yards and it was 1.5 catches. And I had all this stuff on Tyree and we tied up some money and stuff like that. And I said, Ted, I can't get out of this play. I'm going to have to open up an account, take the bonus. We'll pay the bonus back and stuff like that. We'll make a few bucks, but he has to have a really good day for us to get out of this. And he's had 4 or 5 catches the whole year. We have literally no chance at this. So I opened up an account. I got him involved. And then Ted goes to the Super Bowl and then you take over the story.
Yeah. So I go to the Super Bowl and the Thursday before the game, is the last day we could talk to the players. So I was at some hotel and I had to choose. This is the perfect a Patriots season until that game, right? So the Patriots were, 17-0, I believe, to that point, right? They're going to go for 18-0. Is that correct? I believe
18 going on 19, maybe
19-0. Yeah,
19.
So right. So I got all my interviews. Michael Strahan. I talked to Eli. I did all the stuff I needed to do, and I was basically leaving. And they had separate tables, the receivers table, the DBs table, and they had little name tags at each chair. And there was one guy left in the entire room just sitting there, and it was David Tyree at the receivers table. Well, I would have never known who David Tyree was except for we had this prop bet. So I walked up to him and said, "Hey, David, I'm Ted Sobel from KFWB Radio in LA." I said, "Are you aware what a proposition bet is?" And he had no idea. No, and I don't expect him to. So I explained to him. Well, and I still think it was a half a catch. You said it was 1.5.
Yeah, I think it was 1.5. That's why it was such a bad deal.
That is a bad deal. So anyway, I said to him, "Well, here's what it is, David.
Plus money, though."
Yeah, exactly. All you got to do is make one catch, and people who bet the overs will have the overs. So I explained to him and then his thing was, after he sort of got it, he goes, "Well, you tell those people," like I'm talking to every person who ever made a proposition bet. He had no idea. He goes, "You tell those people to bet the overs because I'm going to have a big day and I'm going to have a very important catch in this game." I was like, "Okay, whatever. That was great. Nice to meet you." He was a real nice guy. And so the game, that day was over, went on my business. The game ends with the greatest helmet catch of all time. And it helps to win the game. Certainly on that drive, they needed that catch to stay alive. When Eli looked like he was going to be sacked about 10 times on the one play, right? And not exactly Mr. Mobility. Anyway, the game is over, and I'm down in the locker room getting my interviews. And I got a fun story about Eli. We'll do that another time. But David Tyree, I finished up Eli in the locker room after they won, and I see Tyree over in the corner. And he sees me, and he just finished talking I don't think he was walking to me, but he was walking towards me. And I said, "Hey, David, congratulations. Remember me?" And he goes, I told you I was going to have an important catch." I couldn't believe he remembered me. That's now the greatest catch in the history of the Super Bowl.
So the question is, did he make himself famous or did we make him famous?
Maybe both.
Maybe both.
He had his motivation.
Yeah, a couple catches.
I love that story. And just the fact that, the coincidence of me being there and having the interactions with him, that is one of the great stories of all time for me in the Super Bowls, no doubt.
Yeah. Injuries are factored into the odds, and injuries are factored into how we go about, and, who's the backup, is there any difference, and so on. For Chris, the question would be, how much do you really think about injuries in terms of your handicapping? And for Ted, how much information can you really get beforehand for injuries?
For me, injuries have been a larger part of my handicap over the last several years. And, first you got to be aware of the injuries. That's like, handicapping like 102, so to speak. Okay, you can handicap these teams, and a lot of people don't even think about the injuries all that much. So the first step is to think about the injuries, and then all of a sudden, the second step is, well, is it a cluster injury, and what's the effect? And then you start diving deeper into, well, how good is this replacement going to be? And frankly, I feel like it has worked against me because I believe I've overvalued the loss of certain players more often than not. Even if it is a cluster injury situation, a lot of teams had cluster problems last year and did fine. So it's going to be an evolving process of how I value it going forward, because I feel like I've overvalued these cluster injuries.
I think it's good to learn from that, though, as well, that not overthink the room. That tends to happen here. Sometimes I get injury information when I'm actually doing my NFL player interview during the week, because I do 2 interviews, right? And so most of the time, at least most of the time, they don't like talking about injuries. Certainly not their own, or if it's or somebody else's either. But I try to subtly do it. And sometimes they tell me, "Oh yeah, he was in practice today. He looked great." That kind of stuff. So that's really the only way I can, because the teams don't talk. They don't want to give you any more than. Why would they give it to me if they're not going to give it to their beat reporters?
That reminds me of what happened this week, where Garoppolo has basically been called out for, not being willing to play injured. And you know what? It kind of bothers me a little bit, because I believe that people have different pain tolerance, and it's not their fault in many of the occasions. There's certain things that people can do to me that don't even affect somebody else, but painfully hurt me because I'm sensitive in that location. And there's such a domino effect of an injury affecting different parts of your body, and your basically trying to cover for that, and that creates more problems. So what do you guys think about this? Is Garoppolo a wussy? Is this overblown?
I didn't like the story because it called him out for several years ago and paid no attention to the fact that he was really hurt in the last 2 games he played this year, and might have cost him the game by trying to suck it up and play. I don't think that's Jimmy G right now, and I didn't like the story. And I want to comment a little bit further on the cluster injuries, just in case people don't understand the cluster injuries. For me, it's about cluster injuries at one position. 2 offensive linemen going down, 2 defensive backs going down, 2, in some area where you're impacted, 40% of your line is down. That's a big problem. You can compensate for one person, but you probably can't compensate for 2 people.
Right. And it happens a lot from a DB standpoint too, I think. Where you just say, well, they're not big names, but that is what they do. And these are the guys that are their strength back there. And if you lose 2 of them or more, you got some issues, because the other guys on the bench are not going to replace them like you need them to.
The Lions were picking people up off the street to work their backfield last year. I mean, it was a comedy.
And Baltimore too.
Baltimore for sure. An unfortunate but profitable situation with COVID is you didn't know until game time whether or not people, especially in the NCAA, were going to suit up, because they had no real obligation to tell you. There's patient-doctor confidentiality. But you had sideline reporters, and you could tell 15 to 30 minutes before a college game kicked off that 20 players weren't suited up. So to a lesser extent in the NFL, but definitely in the NCAA, this injury/COVID information became an overriding factor in terms of handicapping games late. And even if you believed you were on the right side, if you paid no attention and you just went about your business and you found out 10 of your players weren't playing, that's a problem.
Yeah. I was on the bad side of it seemed like every NFL COVID situation. I can't remember a time that it worked in my favor. That's why I'm so optimistic about this coming season, because not only did I get a lot of bad bounce luck, but the COVID information always worked against me. So I'm really excited about this year. I don't believe the COVID is going to be as big of an issue this season.
Hopefully unless you're talking Wimbledon.
Yeah, exactly. By the way, I think injury prone, just the term, is way overused. And people throw it around like superstar. They think everybody's a superstar because they're pretty good. Injury prone, there are a lot of guys who get hurt for circumstantial, and they're not injury prone because they're soft. So it's a very unfair term in many respects.
Yeah, I don't think that the term correlates with being soft, so to speak. But, I said it before last season, and I'll say it again this season. There's no way Galladay is going to play a full season. He's just one of those guys that has that frame, and he's going to get banged up, and he's going to miss a lot of time. And you can't pay somebody like that $18 million a year.
No, I get you.
And McCaffrey, absolutely. He seems to get injured every year.
He's a bull in a china shop, right? I mean, he's going to get hurt the way he plays. You want him, but it's like, okay, when's the next injury coming? That's just who he is.
Ted and I have had this discussion for years now, but the less people play in preseason, the more likely they're not going to be in football shape during the season. A lot of hamstrings, a lot of different things. Now you add a 17th game. You have no extra bye week to compensate for the longer season. And so that's one of the things I do in schedule analysis is determine, okay, we talked about this a couple of days ago. Team doesn't have their full bye until week 13, but before that, they play 5 of 7 games on the road with the travel and everything else and so on. It's a human body. It just doesn't operate at the flick of a switch.
Yeah. So I think that the perfect example is how guys are reacting to the lack of practice, real football hitting, that kind of stuff. So when the season starts, we're not having a normal week 1 like we used to several years ago. This is spring training in some respects, the first few games. So you really don't know. And guys are just not football ready yet. That's the truth.
Well, and that begs to demand that while you need to be willing to pivot early in the season, week 2 is always overreaction week.
Oh, yeah.
Big time.
And you got to take week 1 with a grain of salt. You got to take week 2 with a grain of salt. And that's why I don't generally do a lot of betting until week 4.
Makes sense.
And you want the metrics to kick in because it's not just 9 new head coaches. It's a whole bunch of coordinator changes as well. And if these guys aren't playing with the same starting people that are going to be around them for more than 15 minutes in the preseason, how do you know what chemistry they have? There's going to be blown assignments. There's going to be all sorts of things. Week 1 results are so counterpredictive. It's crazy.
And Kansas City is the perfect example of that. They struggled with their new offensive line. And by the end of the season, they came together and they knew each other. And they have a monster offensive line now.
That's right. Good point.
Yeah.
So
I'm out of stuff to talk about. What else? You guys have anything else?
Ron, you don't have any surprise questions for me?
What? I have many of them. I have a surprise topic coming up a little bit later. It's got to be closer to the football season before we go into the particular surprise topic that I have in mind.
Okay.
Well, I think I know Ron's going to be going deep into his NCAA work here in another week or so.
July 4th, the fireworks kind of trigger and they say, oh my goodness, I got to look at the transfer portal. I'm going to use a hammer and beat it into my head before I want to go into that.
That is so annoying.
We appreciate everybody listening. If you have any ideas of stuff that you'd like us to talk about on future shows, evergreen topics, betting topics, questions, for Ted within his experience in the professional leagues for 40 years overall. We're happy to just try to hit those topics. So
absolutely,
we just appreciate everybody listening. We're looking for additional topics that interests everybody. The NFL is going to take a little bit of a side back burner for a little bit while NCAA becomes a focus, but we'll still try to hit on this topic.
Absolutely. And now, how's your Wimbledon going around, Chris? You made a few bucks on that yet?
Yeah, I won my first match today, and I've got a future on this. I don't know her name. It starts with an O, and her last name is a J.
Potpourri.
Yeah,
she's very good. Very good.
I got her 20-1 in Wimbledon.
Oh, that's a good price.
Yeah, it's a real good price.
Very good.
Yeah.
How about the men? Anything there? Nope. No interest.
The only thing I know about tennis is that tennis players have fuzzy balls.
There you go. I couldn't have said it better. Look out for Alcaraz, the new Rafael Nadal out of Spain. The guy's he's going to be unbelievable. He's only 19. He's going to be phenomenal.
What's his name? Alcatraz?
Not Alcatraz. Alcaraz.
Alcaraz.
Okay. I'll tell you, that one letter makes a hell of a lot of difference. No,
we thank everybody for joining, and when we feel like we have something to talk about, we'll be back. And
yes, we will. Damn it.
And
see you later.
That's about it. Like us, subscribe, don't complain, yell, whatever you want.
We love complaints. Complain, please.
All right. We'll see.